All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Big show ahead for you guys. I don't know if you've seen the controversy about the cop punching the woman in the face. That's coming up a little bit later in the show. And then, as usual, profoundly disappointing news about how little change we're going to have in the country. There's one giant piece of really good news, if you ask me, okay, in today's show. I'll save that as a surprise for you guys a little later. But outside of that, it's a debacle of bad news today. I hate to do it to you. I hope that doesn't turn some people off. Okay, and we'll try to have our customary fun with it and anger with it, etc., right? But perfect place to start is Barack Obama's speech last night. Boy, did everybody hate it. Of course, the right-wingers hated it because it was spoken by Barack Obama. They have the most absurd complaints about it and Obama's actions. That's coming up in a little bit. But the left wing also hated it, because they said, look, enough with the talk. What are you going to do? Action. So you thought you were just going to give an office speech and that everything was going to get cured? Oh, Obama gave a speech. What are you going to do about it? So now let's judge for ourselves. Let's watch a portion of the speech here, clip number 2, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
Already, this oil spill is the worst environmental disaster America has ever faced. And unlike an earthquake or a hurricane, it's not a single event that does its damage in a matter of minutes or days. The millions of gallons of oil that have spilled into the Gulf of Mexico are more like an epidemic, one that we will be fighting for months and even years. But make no mistake, we will fight this spill with everything we've got for as long as it takes. We will make BP pay for the damage their company has caused. And we will do whatever's necessary to help the Gulf Coast and its people recover from this tragedy. For decades, we have known the days of cheap and easily accessible oil were numbered. For decades, we've talked and talked about the need to end America's century-long addiction to fossil fuels. And for decades, we have failed to act with the sense of urgency that this challenge requires. Time and again, the path forward has been blocked, not only by oil industry lobbyists, but also by a lack of political courage and candor. The consequences of our inaction are now in plain sight. Countries like China are investing in clean energy jobs and industries that should be right here in America. Each day, we send nearly $1 billion of our wealth to foreign countries for their oil. And today, as we look to the Gulf, we see an entire way of life being threatened by a menacing cloud of black crude. We cannot consign our children to this future. The tragedy unfolding on our coast is the most painful and powerful reminder yet that the time to embrace a clean energy future is now. As we recover from this recession, the transition to clean energy has the potential to grow our economy and create millions of jobs. But only if we accelerate that transition, only if we seize the moment, and only if we rally together and act as one nation. The oil spill is not the last crisis America will face. This nation has known hard times before, and we will surely know them again. What sees us through, what has always seen us through, is our strength, our resilience, and our unyielding faith that something better awaits us if we summon the courage to reach for it.
So, here are the issues. It's usual marshmallow stuff. We can do it with the invisible faith of God above. We can clean up the oil. Well, I would like to see the visible hand of the government step in here and say, and what he didn't say in this speech, what went wrong specifically? Talk about, hey, why didn't they spend the $500,000 on that safety valve that could have avoided billions of dollars in damages to BP, to the government, and to all the taxpayers, let alone the Gulf, and let alone the ecological disaster? Why didn't he make a case for his own energy bill? I mean, he's even too reluctant to do that. And again, with this reaching out to Republicans, that wasn't in the tape, but that was in the speech. Okay, and if we just can get along, dude, you're not gonna get along. They're never going to agree with you. Even in this case, we're going to show you later in the show, Republicans covering for BP to make sure they pay as little as possible. Do you think they're going to work with you on your clean energy? But you can't be that naive. You just can't be. So at this point, it seems like empty politics and empty rhetoric. Of all the, and Robert Reich called it vapid. Almost every progressive commentator in the country thought it was the low point for Obama in not being specific on, damn it, what is the problem? How are you going to fix it? What is the proper role of government? And what are we going to do going forward? Specifics, not empty talk about faith and, oh my God, everything's going to be all right. So here, but Dan Frumkin summed it up best in my mind. He used to be for the Washington Post, now he's with Huffington Post. Here's his last line on it. He said, "This week could ultimately mark the point at which the public and the media start actively discounting what the president says, judging him instead on what he does and doesn't do." To which I say, of course, you should have been doing that all along. It's about damn time, but it looks like we have reached an inflection point. That's what the White House wanted with this speech, but it's just not the one they got. And that inflection point is, okay, enough with the nice talk, okay? What are you going to do? Are you going to be strong? Are you going to take some actions? Okay, so when you just look at the speech by itself, it ranges in opinion from disaster to not good enough at all, okay? Now, having said that, here comes the good news. Today, we get a settlement with BP. He pulls in the CEO and the chairman of BP at the White House, and what he had said vaguely the night before about how they're going to pay all the damages, we're not going to tell you how much, etc. Well, today got made concrete. It's $20 billion, and BP is giving that over to an escrow fund where it's not them that would decide, it's a third party that would decide. It's going to be Kenneth Feinberg, the same guy who did the 9/11 payouts for families, etc. So at least that's much more specific. It's an actual number. It's a big number. It's even bigger than Congress was asking for originally, which was $10 billion, and BP has agreed to it. Okay, now look, I take on Obama when you need to take him on. I think people have been very late to criticizing him for being soft on so many different things and not really delivering change. And it's kind of ironic now that people have realized that on this issue because, or maybe it's not ironic, maybe it's appropriate, maybe all that pressure finally got to him and he finally took some action, right? And that's exactly what he needs, that kind of political pressure. But in the final analysis here, as far as this deal is concerned, credit where credit is due, I think it's a good deal. Now, people say, hey, look, you've got issues with it. Some of it is still unclear. Are there going to be loopholes? How are the payments going to be made? But you know what? I think it's still pretty specific. Unless they come in with some wild card loophole later, they're going to pay $5 billion per year, including $5 billion in 2010, and $20 billion overall, if need be, to spend that money. Now, that's a good deal for BP, too, because they lost $55 billion in market value last time I checked. Because of the uncertainty around them. This way they can go turn around the stock market and say, look, our damages are limited at about $20 billion. So can you give us the rest of that $35 billion back in market cap? Which makes some degree of sense for them. And it's a good deal for the American people because $20 billion is a lot of money and it should go a long way towards covering the costs that were created by this mess. So I don't want people to be too tough on Obama in that, oh, everything he does is wrong. That's crazy. Don't do that. You got to judge things based on how they are, right? Not on your preconceived notions. At the same time, I am so tired of people being soft on him. So when you look at this, though, objectively, you say, in the final analysis, when regarding the payment with the oil spill, that's a job nicely done. You're not going to get everything you want. This is as good a deal as you can get. And you know what? Sometimes when you get a good deal, you know what you should do? You should take it. And that's what's happened here. So I'm very pleasantly surprised, and I'm not even that surprised, honestly. I thought he had to act here, and he did. And I'm glad that we put political pressure on him. So everybody did, not us specifically. Everybody else was very tough on him here, along with us. When on the rest of the issues, it just seems to be a few progressive voices that are coming in with logic. So all right, so that's good. Now, of course, the second part of it is I would like for him to, again, make a case for clean energy, for his own bill, and what we do in fixing this mess going forward. But I'll take my victories where I can get them, and I'll take this. Later in the program, I also want to talk about a deal where the NRA gets this special exemption, which is outrageous, but I actually think we should get it done. I think we should give in to the NRA. Okay, can you believe that? Look, I'm a pragmatist, man. Somebody gives me the queen, I'm definitely going to take it. But if they give me their rook or their queen, their knight or their bishop, I'll probably take that too. I'll keep a wary eye. But let's get some deals done. As long as they're not sellouts and they're not, just to make the corporations happy. And I don't think this is one of those. All right, so that's the good news. Now, by the way, here's some more bad news. Guess how much oil is coming out? Remember, originally the government said 42,000 gallons. And then they're like, well, okay, that's a bit comical. They said, all right, 210,000 gallons a day, right? A day. Well, now the new estimate that the scientists came up with and the government agrees with is somewhere between 1.47 million to 2.52 million gallons of oil a day that's going out. I mean, I don't have to tell you, that's an enormous amount of oil and leagues above what they initially said was coming out. Now, here's the part of that story that drove me crazy, though. You remember when they were cutting into the pipe and everybody saw the video of them cutting into the pipe and they had some idea on how they were going to cap it and that's why it made sense? To me, I'm not damn it, Jim, I'm a talk show, so I'm not a scientist. But just common sense-wise, it didn't make much sense to me. Like, look, you seem to be drilling open another hole. Unless you got a really good plan, I'd be careful about that. And it turns out they didn't have a really good plan. And guess what that caused? It caused the leak to go up by 20% a day. But it had a benefit for BP, and I said yes for BP, not for us. It's, well, to some degree us as well. That procedure they did, although it caused a bigger rupture, allows them to capture $648,000, that's funny, much more than that, but 648,000 gallons of oil every day. So, you see, the reason I bring that up is, this is why BP shouldn't have been in charge of getting this problem fixed. Because they don't have the same goals as we do. They don't have the same incentives as we do. Our incentive is get the oil to stop because it's killing the Gulf of Mexico and it's going to kill the local businesses in the Gulf, right? Their incentive is how do I get that oil from instead of going into the water to go back into my back pocket, okay? So what they did was exactly along the lines of their goals but not our goals. So they wound up making a cut in the pipe where they got more oil out for themselves, but wound up spilling more oil into the Gulf. You see how that works? What do I tell you every day? It's incentives and disincentives. If I'm the president, I look at BP, I go, what's their incentive? It's not necessarily, now they got a high incentive to stop it because it's costing them a lot of money every day, right? In cleanup costs, et cetera. But their bigger incentives to capture the oil, and it's not in line with my incentives. So I've got to be all over them to make sure they're doing the right thing. And it appears that that didn't happen here. Now, in the midst of all of this, and plenty of criticism for Obama to go around, and we'll come back to that issue in a second. Now, we have the Republicans. Now, in a little bit, I'm going to show you, not in this segment, but in an upcoming segment, Haley Barbour's response. Because it is a perfect example of Republican spin and saying the exact opposite of what you mean. And I'm going to do a decoder for you guys. I think that's worth the price of admission alone for today's show. That's coming up in a little bit. But first, let's start with the absurd. And it only gets crazier as you go down the ride. Let's start with Gingrich, because he had a problem with Barack Obama's address last night. Now, did it have something to do with BP? Did it have something to do with the oil spill? Let's find out. Let's see what his beef was. Clip number 4.
Now let's talk about something else, some content in the speech that you might have found surprising. Listen to President Obama and his references to God.
Phil, is not the last crisis America will face. This nation has known hard times before, and we will surely know them again. What sees us through, what has always seen us through, is our strength, our resilience, and our unyielding faith that something better awaits us if we summon the courage to reach for it. Tonight, we pray for that courage. We pray for the people of the Gulf. And we pray that a hand may guide us through the storm towards a brighter day.
All right, Mr. Speaker, what do you think of that?
Well, I hope he means it. Look, I'm not going to resent any time a president of the United States calls on God. I think it's good. I think it was good when Franklin Delano Roosevelt led the whole country in a 6.5-minute prayer on D-Day, which some 900 radio stations replayed this year. I think it is good to recognize that our rights come from our Creator. And I'm delighted that the President, I'm sad that they took a crisis of this scale, but I'm delighted that the President has recognized that we, in fact, all are subordinate to a larger God, and that we need to seek guidance from that God.
But, Mr. Speaker, did you find it at all disingenuous? Because some people are analyzing that this morning as saying it was disingenuous coming from a president who does not go to church on a regular basis.
I'm happy for any president of the United States to find a moment to turn to God, to seek guidance. And I think it's important for us to be a little generous at a moment like this. If he's prepared to publicly recognize God, maybe we should encourage him to do it more often.
What am I going to do with these people, man? We got legitimate problems here, and this is the worst environmental disaster in United States history. And they're talking about, did he talk about God enough? Did he not talk about it enough? Now, if they had followed that up, as I did, by saying, hey, look, he needs to take specific action, let's worry about God's role in this later, right? That's a different point. Their point is, okay, how did he talk about God? Well, should we, because he can't win either way. If he doesn't talk about God, they go, he doesn't go to church and he never talks about God. If he talks about God, they're like, oh, here he goes, pretending to care about God, talking about God, even though he doesn't go to church, which is also made up. Like Gretchen Carlson thinks she knows exactly what his church schedule is. And she keeps coming back to that. Look, from my point of view, I don't need him in church. I need him in the Oval Office actually getting this thing cleaned up. But this is the Republicans 101 and Fox News Channel 101. Blame him for anything and everything, even if it doesn't make sense. Ironically, they're doing him a huge favor because it distracts people and it makes people go, oh, those criticisms of Obama are crazy. Oh, he didn't go to church enough, and that's what hurt him on the BP oil spill. His pants were too fancy. He ate the burger the wrong way. And it makes people reflexively, I think a lot of people, defend Obama, when they need to be questioning what his actions on this spill are in the specifics and not get caught up in this Fox News nonsense. All right, there's a lot more where that came from. Let's come right back. Young Turks.
Times I went to watch out the Marriott's.
All right, back on the Young Turks. Now, last night in Obama's speech, he reached out to Republicans again, begging them to work with him. I don't know when he's going to get it through his thick skull that's never going to happen. This is example number, 2800, that they're not going to do that. So today I was listening to Sean Hannity, and he says on the radio, this guy talking about being furious and kicking ass, etc. He's like a little kid who's petulant and throwing a temper tantrum. That's the same Sean Hannity on the same Fox News channel earlier that had said, oh, Obama's not passionate enough, he's not angry enough, he's not emotional enough. So if he doesn't talk about being angry, that's what he gets. If he talks about being angry, then he's petulant. It's a no-win because they're not on your side. When are you going to understand that? And then today, Sean Hannity also talking about, oh, look, it's the government's responsibility to clean up this oil spill. Government, government, government. Well, that's curious. Now, that's the same Sean Hannity who normally thinks it's never the government's responsibility. Why? Because when it comes to making profits, no, government, get out of there. Don't regulate them. Don't regulate them. Let them make all the money. And if something goes wrong because you didn't regulate them, well, government, come on in. Come on. We got to socialize the costs. Privatize the profits, socialize the costs. American taxpayer, pay for this. Come on, hurry up. You think they're on your side? The Republicans, the conservatives, and the Fox News channels of the world? No, they want to stick you with the bill. So now here comes Lamar Alexander. Again, Obama reaches out to the Republicans. What the Republicans want to do in this energy bill that's going to come up is they don't want to tax the industry at all. They don't want to regulate the industry at all. They want to make sure the industry can make as much profit as humanly possible without any government interference, whether it's safety regulations or heading in a new direction in energy. But they don't mind giving out money, because when they give out money, they get it back from the lobbyists from those industries. So they want their cake and they want to eat it too. What they want to do is say, oh, yeah, all the solar energy and the clean energy, sure, we'd love to subsidize that. Then the best way to subsidize that is to give it to the giant oil corporations that already exist, and I'm sure they'll eventually get around to solar energy, etc. That's the Republican plan. So Obama reaches out last night and gives them, rhetorically, almost exactly what they were looking for. So Lamar Alexander, Republican from Tennessee, is on MSNBC this morning, and they're going to ask him, hey, the president seemed like he gave you the gift you wanted. What's your reaction? You're going to be shocked at his reaction. Let's watch.
President Obama is getting it from all sides today. Republicans ripped him for pushing a cap-and-trade plan, which is, of course, a plan to charge companies for pollution. Republicans called that an energy tax, but some climate activists were dismayed because actually he didn't mention cap-and-trade at all in that speech.
So joining us now, Senator Lamar Alexander, chairman of the Senate Republican Conference. And Senator, I have to ask you, plain and simple, I read your pre-buttal statement yesterday. It looked as if the president did take your advice. He did not make a push for pricing carbon pollutants, cap and trade, whatever you want to refer to it as, in his speech last night. Did that make you happy?
No, he took part of my advice. Actually, he did. He referred to the climate bill. It was hard. He didn't refer to much, to tell you the truth, Chuck. What I had hoped he would do is to say he wanted a mini Manhattan Project for clean energy and focus on the things we agree on: electric cars, nuclear plants, and energy research and development. He could have done that.
How is what he said inconsistent with that?
Well, he didn't say that. I mean, presidents only have this opportunity every several years. I mean, President Reagan did it on the Challenger, President Bush at 9/11. This was a chance for the president to say, this is the way we're going to go. He didn't mention electric cars and trucks. He didn't mention nuclear plants. And he didn't mention energy research and development, all of which he's for, all of which we're for on the Republican side. We could get that done pretty fast. If the president and the Democrats in Congress say, we want to use the crisis to pass a national energy tax, that's misusing the crisis. If they say we want to use the crisis to find a way to reduce our dependence on foreign oil by electrifying half our cars and trucks, that's good policy. And it's not manipulating anything because the president is for it and all 41 Senate Republicans are for it. So why don't we do it?
That's beautiful. So he gave you everything you wanted. Are you still happy? Nope. Not good enough. No, I want 110%. When is Obama going to realize he's never going to get Lamar Alexander's vote or those other guys? You see what Alexander's terms are? Complete and utter surrender. No tax whatsoever on the non-clean energy that's going out now. No cap on pollution at all. No. Instead, take money and give it to the nuclear industry. Take money and give it in research and development to the energy industry, and give more subsidies. So all the money goes out to all his oil buddies and his other energy buddies, and none of it comes back in. That's the Republican plan. Why are we having conversations with these guys? Why is Obama still reaching out? Well, remember what got him in trouble in the first place. He reached out to the Republicans and said, okay, you guys win. Let's drill, baby, drill. Let's do more offshore drilling. And then this disaster happens, and then he owns the policy. Then all of a sudden, it's his offshore drilling policy. Every time you accept a Republican position, they use it against you. Dan Frumkin, in the article I mentioned earlier in the show, said what Tom says all the time here, what we've talked about on the show before, which Tom Hartman also talks about. My God, man, if they're going to call you a socialist, Maoist, whatever the hell, communist, right, then you've got, and they're never going to work with you under any circumstances. Well, doesn't that liberate you? Why don't you actually try to be a progressive? No, instead, he's going to go further to the right in an effort to appease them again. Let's see if that works. Don't hold your breath. Okay, now we go to an even more absurd conservative. Bill Randall, he's a Tea Party candidate running to be the GOP nominee in a congressional race in North Carolina. He's got an interesting conspiracy theory on why this oil spill happened. He says, quote, now I'm not necessarily a conspiracy person. Wrong again, Bob. You are, and you're about to prove it. But I don't think enough investigation has been done on this. Someone needs to be digging into that situation. Personally, and this is purely speculative on my part and not based on any fact, that part is true. He continues, but personally, I feel there's a possibility that there was some sort of collusion. I don't know how or why, but in that situation, if you have someone from a company violating a safety process and the government signing off on it, excuse me, but maybe they wanted it to leak. But then it got beyond what was anticipated. We had an explosion and loss of life, and oh man, then we have a panic. Is there a cover-up going on? I'm not saying there necessarily is, but I think there's enough facts on the table for people that they really need to do some investigative research and find out what went on with that and get a subpoena of records and everything else. Now, did they want this to leak? I mean, in his crazy conspiratorial minds, although he doesn't believe in conspiracies, BP executives and Obama officials got together and they're like, should we cause a leak? That'll cost each of us billions of dollars and tremendous public support? Bingo. How does that help anybody? We found out today it might cost BP $20 billion. You think they're going to sign off on that? How mental do you have to be to think that? Now, here comes the irony. Okay, so his conspiracy theory that they did it together and they did it on purpose is insane. But the irony of it is that the first part of his statement is somewhat true, but not for the reasons he stated. Yes, the government and the industry colludes in energy and in all the fields to not do the proper safety regulations. During the Bush years, you remember when they used to stand up the cows? Did you see that video? They would stand up the cows that had mad cow disease and couldn't stand up and push them through the line, and the government official would look the other way and be like, yeah, sure, fine. Oh, somebody gets that mad cow disease later. Who cares, man? Everybody's making money. Remove the safety regulations, people make a little bit more money. In this case, BP didn't want to do safety regulations. One $500,000 valve would have solved this $20 billion problem. But they wanted to cut corners, make every nickel they could. And the government looked the other way. They looked the other way during the Bush years, and honestly, they looked the other way when Salazar took over and was the Interior Secretary. Salazar, by the way, was the most conservative Democrat probably in the Senate. Well, along with Ben Nelson and Mary Landrieu, okay? And if you consider Joe Lieberman a Democrat. But he was in that conservative group, and his idea is deregulation. Now, how'd that work out for us? That's the real collusion, where they decide, hey, you know what? Protecting taxpayers, protecting the environment, well, we don't need that so much. Let's just all make more money. That's the real collusion. And of course, it's short-sighted, and it winds up costing all of us more money. And ironically, that's what Bill Randall doesn't understand. And if he gets into office, he will push for the position of deregulation so that this problem can happen again. And then he'll go, oh, I wonder if they did it on purpose. No, you did it on purpose by looking the other way and getting your lobbyist money. It's government officials like that Bill Randall hopes to be. That's the real problem. I'm on a warpath today. All right, let's do one more BP one here, and then I'm going to come back and show you Haley Barbour, because it's a perfect case of how Republicans cover for corporate America. Perfect. Okay, so, and I got so much more on this. Anyway, so Obama has the meeting with the BP executives in the White House, and then BP Chairman Carl-Henrik Svanberg comes out. He is Swedish, so he doesn't, English is not his first language. So perhaps that's the excuse you can give him, but he's decided that he's going to look out for the little people, quite literally. Let's go to clip number 10 and have him show us how much he's concerned about this.
The small people. I hear comments sometimes that large oil companies are greedy companies or don't care, but that is not the case in BP. We care about the small people.
Are you not merciful? Oh, we care about the small people, you people. I mean, you are the large people, you are the small people. But from time to time, we care about it. I think I gave him an accent that is totally not Swedish. And look, I don't want to get too ballistic on that, because maybe it's a language problem, okay? I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Okay. Am I not merciful? All right. And remember, look, I'm angry about a lot of this stuff, and we're going to come back and do Barbour, among others, and Palin. God, Palin's a disaster, okay? But look, don't lose track today. We did get the $20 billion from BP. That is a good thing. That's concrete results, okay? So let's come back and rip more Republicans. Young Turks.
Young Turks, TYT. Young Turks, TYT.
All right, back on the Young Turks. Who didn't want to hear that whole song? Okay, I am Cenk Uygur. J.R. Jackson's producing. Jesus Godoy is directing. We have a fun and interesting show for you guys. You know what? Let me whet your appetite with a couple of BP clips that are always fun, and then I'm going to do an NRA story, which is a surprising twist. Jesus, I forget what numbers they are, but I want to do the Exxon clip first. Exxon CEO is up in front of the House. They've got hearings. Bart Stupak's going to question him, and he admits something fascinating. Let's watch.
So if you can't handle 40,000, how are you going to handle 166,000 per day, as you indicate?
The answer to that is when these things happen, we are not well equipped to deal with them.
So when these things happen, these worst case scenarios, we can't handle them, correct?
We are not well equipped to handle them. There will be impacts, as we are seeing. And we've never represented anything different than that.
And you've all said
and that's why the emphasis is always on preventing these things from occurring, because when they happen, we're not very well equipped to deal with them. And that's just a fact of the enormity of what we're dealing with.
All right, well, there you go. That is the CEO of the world's largest oil company and the world's largest company, period, saying we're not equipped to deal with the disasters we create. Well, how do you like them apples? I don't like them very much. I do agree with the part that that's why you have to work really, really hard to make sure they don't happen in the first place. And that's what we need the government for. It should not be something that's voluntary. It's not something that, hey, would you like to do it, or would you like to cut corners and save a couple of dollars? No, we need the cops on the beat, and that's the government. I mean, if you weren't convinced of that before, come on, please be open to facts. After you see the CEO tell you himself, we are not equipped to deal with it. If it blows up, we're in a lot of trouble. Can you please agree with me that we should do everything in our power to make sure it doesn't blow up? Can I get a hell yeah? All right. Well, here's who I'm going to get a hell yeah from. Representative, I believe it's pronounced Gao. He's from Louisiana. He's a Republican, but he's mad about the oil spill. It affects his district, and he's going to let BP CEO know it in a very interesting and curious way. Let's go to clip number 8.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Chairman, the oil disaster has caused great economic impact to my district. Hundreds of businesses have closed and thousands out of work. Mr. Stern asked Mr. McKay to resign. Well, in the Asian culture, we do things differently. During the samurai days, we just give you a knife and ask you to commit harakiri. My constituents are still debating on what they want me to ask you to do.
Yeah, so we're putting a couple of thoughts behind it. I mean, one option is resign. The other option is kill yourself in a very violent and, unusual way. Look, okay, that's absurd, okay? It is the politicians trying to out-tough one another. He's a Republican, Gowis, right? What I would prefer much more is you say, hey, you know what? Let's do the safety regulations so that the rig doesn't blow up so that nobody has to stick a knife anywhere afterwards, okay? No, don't go in that direction, okay? I know the natural Republican urge is violence, but bring it down. I don't like what BP did at all, but even I wouldn't go that far. So, 10-2. Well, 10-8, let's put it that way, okay? All right, now, we'll come back to BP probably in a little bit, but I want to go to a different issue. This issue has a lot of twists and turns. Now, the Democrats are working on campaign finance laws because Citizens United passed the Supreme Court saying that corporations can spend an unlimited amount of money. And the Democrats and some Republicans want to stop that because they think that's a bad idea, that the corporations have already pretty much taken over Congress, and if you allow them to spend unlimited money, well, then the takeover will be complete. And I think they're working on a limited clock because every election cycle, corporations will get to spend more and more money, and they'll wisen up, and they'll say, oh, wow, you know what? Before we were kind of buying these guys. Now we can completely buy them. So I think this has got to get resolved by 2010. If you wait until 2012, we're in a whole heap of trouble. Okay, by then it might be too late. Now, the law that they're working on from Senator Schumer and then Representative Van Hollen in the House is actually a pretty good one. It says if you're going to do campaign ads, you've actually got to put your face on it, the CEO of the company, and there's got to be great disclosure requirements. Where's the money coming from? If you're an organization that's raising money and then spending it on political ads, if it's coming from special interests, whether it's corporations or labor unions, you've got to let us know where the money's coming from, and you've got to sign off on it in a public way. Now, that makes sense. Doesn't mean you can't spend it. You just got to stand up and say, yeah, it was me. I'm the one who bought that politician and ran that ad. Okay, not necessarily in those terms, but it's actually a rare law coming out of this Congress that is actual reform and is pretty tough. So I'm happy with it. Now, it ran into trouble, of course, right? The NRA came out and said, no, we're totally against this. We think it might affect us, and we don't want to tell you where we get our money from. And then they turned to all their Republican friends and all their Democratic friends and said, all right, we're going to score you on this. So what that means is if you vote in favor of this legislation and this rule applies to the NRA, then we're going to say that you're against gun rights, okay? And we're going to knock down your gun rights score. So everybody goes into a panic, and then in the House, they work out a deal, where the deal is, all right, this law applies to everyone but the NRA, okay? Now, that's very unprincipled, it's ridiculous, and it's the Democrats caving into the guys who are going to spend money against them, right? Having said all that, I would take the deal. Okay, now why? Because this is such an important law, and it's such an important issue. This is the one issue that affects all other issues, because we're not going to get real reform in finance or healthcare or any other issue if our politicians don't work for us and they work for corporations. So, and this is actually a rare good law. Take the NRA exception, take the deal, and then we'll come back and deal with the NRA thing later, okay? See, I'm a pragmatist, man. We got to get this done, because if it gets delayed and we don't get it done and it gets past the 2010 elections, well then these corporate interests and these special interests are going to grow larger and larger and larger. We're not going to be able to come back and pass this law. By the time you come back to it a second time, it's going to be much weaker until it doesn't really exist. Take the deal now. Be practical, okay? Now, unfortunately, on the Senate side, you go over there and Dianne Feinstein, who's for tighter gun regulations, says, no, this is unacceptable, this is outrageous, and I won't sign off on it. Now, here's the problem. If she keeps that up, the Republicans love to give losses to the Democrats. They'll turn around and they'll say, especially if you don't have the NRA provision, we're voting against it. And all they need is a couple of Democrats to vote against it. And if you got a filibuster, which the Republicans will do, that's it, it's gone. Then you have nothing. This is a situation where 3/4 of a loaf, trust me, is a lot better than no loaf. Now, you know me, I fought, to make sure that these things are as tough as possible, that we don't have these nonsense political deals. But bounds of reason here. This is very important. On this, I think we should definitely take the deal. And then if later you want to come back and address that NRA issue, then I'm 100% with you. Let's see what happens, because I'm afraid that this is going to be used as an excuse to not do anything, and then we're hosed on every issue. Let's see what happens, man. And, as I look at Dianne Feinstein, I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I don't know if she's doing it based on principle and based on, doing the right thing here, which is possible, or if she's doing it like, perfect little excuse to make sure that the corporations are not controlled. We wind up killing this bill. What could we do? We couldn't agree over the NRA thing, and I get more money from corporate America, and I never lose elections again. I don't know. I don't know what it is. But this is not the one to make the ideological stance on. And, for everybody who thinks I'm a purist and I don't like any deal, you're damn wrong, man. This is a perfect example of it. All right, now let's go to the other side of the coin. Financial reform. Look, in a lot of ways, I hate doing these stories, and I swear to you, I've minimized them, man. I've got them down to a tiny amount when we could be talking about them all day, just because I'm so frustrated with it. I'm pulling my hair out every day. Look, you know what we're doing? We're trying to do that campaign of Goldman Give It Back. It's theyoungturks.com/Goldman Give It Back. That's a wiki protest that we've set up to try to get our $13 billion back from Goldman Sachs. Yes, earlier today, I was on a show, Ring of Fire, a good progressive show. That's going to air on the weekends. You should check that out. And we were having this conversation, and it's so frustrating. They just took our $13 billion, let alone the overall $182 billion that went to AIG. They just robbed us, and we can't get the American people to care about it. They're so misdirected by the rest of the media and the rest of the politicians. It's maddening. So, okay, now that's that specific issue. Now, the news today is about the broad reform effort. So, it looked like the Senate, at least passed the Blanche-Lincoln Amendment on derivatives. Very important amendment. Now, I'm very dubious that it's going to stay in the final bill. I told you that from the beginning. But if it stays, it's great, because it says, hey, you know what? you can't do the risky derivatives trading, those bets that cost us money before, with money that's backed up by the American taxpayer. There isn't a person in the country who should disagree with that, conservative or liberal. And obvious, and of course, and when if you ask the public and they understand the issue, they're with you, right? But when the politicians are bought by the bankers, then we're in trouble. But somewhat miraculously, it passed the Senate. And the House is supposed to be tougher in general, more progressive in general. Well, come to find out, no. On this issue, the House is more conservative and more pro-bankers. So they are fighting to make sure that the derivatives amendment is taken out. And we have a revolt led by Gary Ackerman, a Democrat from New York, saying he's going to get all of the congressmen, the whole 26-person delegation, to vote against the legislation if it has that tough derivatives amendment. He's saying, quite literally, he said, I don't just work, let me give you the exact quote. Those of us in New York represent not only Main Street, but Wall Street as well, and understand very much that Main Street is affected by Wall Street. So there he is, Congressman Ackerman, coming out saying, I'm on the side of Wall Street, and I'm going to get everybody in New York, in our delegation, Democrat or Republican, to sell out to Wall Street, to make sure we protect their risky bets that the taxpayer pays off. Okay? So now, if you lose all 26 congressmen from New York, and you lose some of the so-called new Democratic coalition, those are the blue dogs who take Wall Street money, and you lose the Republicans, guess what? You don't have enough votes. So there goes that derivatives amendment, likely. Number two, they said, well, it's okay. The administration hated that anyway. Administration is theoretically leading the reform effort. They hated the one piece of reform that was really tough. But they want the Volcker rule, the administration does. Well, guess what the House says they're not interested in either? The Volcker rule. The Volcker rule says you can't trade, a bank can't try to do its own trading, make its own money, while being backed up by the taxpayer again, by using taxpayer-protected funds that are deposits, or getting almost free credit from the Fed at this point. So you got to separate out those two things. You can go and make your own bets, and you can make money on them, but you can't do it with taxpayer money. Again, that's a solid rule, very positive. The House is now saying, nope, 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 nope. We're going to protect Wall Street. And when you go to Barney Frank, who's supposed to be leading the effort in the House for reform, well, that guy's become a complete and utter joke. He's a jokester. He makes jokes. He's saying he's encouraging Ackerman to fight it all the way. The derivatives legislation, and at every turn, he's looking to water it down. Barney Frank, enemy of the people. Okay? Look, it's a strong term, and I don't want you to take it in crazy directions. I'm just telling you, he wants to give your taxpayer money to bankers. That's what I mean by enemy, okay? I don't mean anything more than that. Please don't get carried away, okay? But that's it. They're not going to fix a damn thing, okay? Now, you think all that is bad? Remember yesterday we told you the inarguable point, Franken's point on the rating agencies. They shouldn't get money from the people they're rating. Anybody with 2 bits of sense can understand that, right? If I come to you and I say, hey, you're going to rate a product I'm putting together, but I'm going to pay you, what are you going to do? You're going to give me a good rating, right? So Franken wants to stop that. And they were having a debate yesterday, we told you about it, Franken and Barney Frank. Guess who won the debate? Barney Frank. So the one thing I was excited about, the Al Franken amendment, gone. Your congressmen are jokers. They're making a joke out of you, out of this whole political system, out of our democracy. Everybody thinks, oh, look, if things go up and down, and you get reform little by little, and it'll be just like before, and we pass Social Security by bits and pieces, etc. It's just like before, and the economy's not any worse than before. It goes up, it goes down. Don't worry, it went down, it'll go back up. You're misunderstanding what's happening. Things are not the same as they were before. There have been a series of Supreme Court decisions we've outlined on the show before, starting in 1978, that allowed corporations to be considered people, which was earlier, and then to have First Amendment rights, and then to be able to spend money based on those First Amendment rights. They have captured all of our politicians, and they've used it to get themselves bigger and bigger payouts at the expense of the entire economy and the taxpayers. The whole system is corrupt, and it's going to crash. Now, we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong, and I'm the doomsday guy, and I don't understand. Or maybe I'm entirely right. And these waves of crashes are getting quicker and quicker together and more extreme. Now, why is that? Because they deregulated everything in 1999 and 2000, and then again in 2004. I don't want to get into all the details as we've done for an endless number of shows here, right? But understand, it's not the same as before. They took away all the protections. They took away Glass-Steagall. They took away our ability to say, hey, you can only do a certain amount of leverage. You can only do a certain amount of betting. Hey, you can't use taxpayer money. They're using taxpayer money for insane betting. That changed recently. So the crash is inevitable. And the worst case scenario on this financial reform legislation is coming to pass. If the House gets its way and the bankers that have bought the congressman get their way, this reform that comes out will be worse than nothing at all, because they'll pretend that they have solved it when they've done almost absolutely nothing, okay? I say almost just because there's a couple of things like auditing the Fed that are still hanging in there and that are, that'll help us a little bit. And then Obama will come out to you, he'll put out the mission accomplished banner, and he'll say, I did it. I was the change. Everything is solved. Don't worry. I brought you the change. Aren't I a great politician? And then the crash. I don't know when it comes. I don't know if it's in 6 months. I don't know if it's in 3 years. I used to say that, but I think it's been 6 months since I've been saying that. So I'll knock it down to 6 months or 2.5 years. Okay? But if they don't fix things, and they're not going to because they're deeply corrupt, we're going to crash. Oh, God, it's going to be a mess. And then when we do, you will hear the Republicans come out and say, you see, we should have had less government, less regulation, and we should let the bankers take more money. We got to be ready for that moment, man. That's the real ideological battle that's going to happen in this country when the next crash happens. And if we let the Republicans and the conservatives and the Fox News channel mislead us and head in a direction that continues to make things worse, we're not going to be able to recover. We have to make sure that we don't rely on Obama and the current Democrats. They're not on our side. We have to do this, our own fight here, to clean up politics before it's too late. Wish us luck. Young Turks.